Beast got from Hiram Clark. Beast got from Hiram Clark. Beast got from Hiram Clark.
Welcome to the B Block Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Scott, and I appreciate you, very much appreciate you for joining me. We are doing this right now on a Saturday morning, and I gotta say, I am so glad football is finally back. Talked to y'all earlier in the week about some of my impressions from NRG Stadium, being there for some media availability since then. The coordinators have talked, more players have talked. We heard from Stephon Diggs, and look, I ain't about to talk about none of that because I'm just ready to watch this Texans-Colts game, and we got plenty of appetizers. They're appetizers if you're a Texans fan. If you mostly got Texans interest, you got some appetizers with the season opening the way it did. Ravens, Chiefs, Packers, Eagles, a lot to get into, man. And so I want to start, though, with Packers, Eagles, and Brazil, and what I am calling the occupational hazard game. Packers, Eagles in Brazil, no doubt, I think, is what you might describe or would describe as the occupational hazard game. Before we even get into some of the game takeaways, I feel like the big story is going to end up being the Jordan Love injury, of course. But up until that moment, and to be clear, his injury didn't feel like it had anything to do with this. But until Jordan Love went down there toward the end of the game, it was basically the next to last play of the game, or next to next last play of the game, because he goes down and there's 5 seconds left in the game, and we figured Malik Willis comes in and only has one play left, but they end up running the two plays: incompletion, short pass to the sideline, and then Malik Willis is sacked to end the game. And so the Jordan Love story, and I'll get to that in a second, the injury will be the story of the game. But Packers-Eagles was the occupational hazard game, man. All it was a slip and slide the whole time. And it's funny because this is something that you could probably expect, or probably should expect, going into the international game, because most of the international games end up having this kind of issue. You think about it, football is really mostly just played in the United States, and the whole point of going to these other places to play is to kind of grow the game because there's an increased popularity in these places. But the issue is they don't actually play football there, and so they don't really have the same type of football fields, or what they do is often try to convert what is essentially a soccer field into a football field, which to the layman sounds simple enough. If you can play soccer on the field, why can't you play football on the field? Should be able to do it. But as we've seen, both in London games and here in this game specifically, I know they played games in Mexico City and other places, but this is often an issue with international games. J.J. Watt talked about this or mentioned this on X/Twitter during the night or during the game, that look, man, and it became a theme, so everybody ended up talking about it. Like, this is a problem, and it took away from, I thought, the quality of the game, because you had everybody out there slipping all the time. Now, both teams had to deal with the same conditions, and it was certainly a problem for both teams. So if you want to look at it that way, it was like somewhat of an equal playing field. But I could not get away from the occupational hazard aspect or element of this. Like, to me, it is a major, major, major issue. And I understand these guys get paid a lot of money, and this is like, nobody is feeling sorry for these guys with NFL contracts that, get to go out of the country to work and to play in front of tens of thousands of people and far, far more than that on television. But this was and has to be addressed, I feel like, as a serious player safety issue going forward. Like if the more international games that we do and that we get and that we see, the more information that we get and the better understanding it feels like we should have for how dangerous these field conditions are. You got guys out there slipping and sliding on every play. And not only does that take away from the quality of the viewing experience, the quality of the game itself, which I know is a thing that most of us care more about because we're the ones that are viewing. We are the ones experiencing the game from that standpoint. But from a straight up workers safety, like workers safety kind of aspect of it, like it can't be that. It can't be that. It shouldn't be that at all. So I'm very interested in how players going forward, and I'm sure I just have not looked into this enough. But I would imagine going forward, players are going to be a lot more vocal about the field conditions and the working conditions that they have when they go out there to these games out of the country. Because it's one thing to go out of the country on a work assignment. It's another thing to go out of the country on a work assignment and to not be accommodated for the working conditions to be substandard to what they would be normally if you were at home. So that was the thing for me. And I was pretty honest about this. Like I got to the point where I was entertained by that. Like it was, and this is probably an issue as well. Like it got to the point where it was distracting. I'm watching for the football, but now that I see everybody slipping and sliding, I'm also watching each play to see who is going to slip. I'm watching each play to see who's going to lose their footing out there in that grass, just as much as I'm watching for the plays, which again is a little bit distracting. And I know that the NFL is going to get eyeballs and they want eyeballs on the game and all of that. And so what you're watching for doesn't really matter, to the bottom line. But I did think that was distracting because I was somehow just as entertained by what I would call their either lack of preparation or inconsideration or like just this overall issue that is existing here on the field became just as much of a spectator sport as football itself. And I don't think that is ultimately good for the NFL, certainly not good for its players who really could have gotten themselves hurt. The Jordan Love injury, that was bad, and that was more of a football injury that could have happened on any field and essentially on any play for a quarterback. But I feel like the league is fortunate and these players are fortunate that they got out of that. Most of them got out of that without that field seemingly impacting their overall and long-term health for this season. Now, I mentioned the Jordan Love injury. The Jordan Love injury looked bad and it sounds bad. Again, I'm recording this on a Saturday morning. And as of right now, as of the time of this recording, we don't have like an official diagnosis, official word on what the Jordan Love injury is. We saw him limp off the field and even, limp off the field from the injury toward the end of the game. And even as they're going to the locker room, from what I understand, he had to be helped with the trainer and with the running back, Josh Jacobs, kind of helping him get to the locker room. Now, maybe he just didn't want the image of a cart, but it sounded like a man that could have used a cart. If you're a quarterback, I feel like we got to change cart culture, cart carrying culture out here in sports where, hey, if a guy gets carted off, we don't have to automatically assume the worst. We don't have to, like, in terms of his injury itself or that, like, for whatever reason, he's weak or can't walk, like this was a thing with Trevor Lawrence either last year or the year before when he had the ankle injury. I think it was last year, and he didn't want the cart, and he ended up admitting later on, man, I should have took the cart. I should have used the cart. Man, if you are limping at all, especially as a quarterback, especially as a paid quarterback or a quarterback that's about to get paid, in which case Jordan Love is a quarterback that just got paid, that means you are now valuable. And you don't need to be out here limping out there in Brazil, man, after you got leg and ankle and knee or whatever it is rolled up on the way he did. But it looked bad. It sounds bad. I'm hoping for the worst. Jordan Love is somebody that I am, and this is this is probably because I'm not a fan of an opposing NFC North team or an NFC team at all, to where I can root for Jordan Love from afar because his success does not conflict with any of my rooting interest or any teams that I really compete with. Like if Jordan Love goes to the Super Bowl every year for the rest of his career, it'll be no sweat off my back. So I'm rooting for. He seems like a decent dude, good football player. Now last night I did not think was a great night for Jordan Love. I didn't think it was overall the last couple of days between Ravens, Chiefs, and Packers, Eagles. I didn't feel like it was a great night overall, really, for quarterbacks. And I'll just put Patrick Mahomes to the side, because like I don't know what Patrick Mahomes could have done, good or bad, that would have made you change or move off the pivot of whatever you feel like Patrick Mahomes is. So, and he stands alone anyway in a category of his own. But for everyone else, I thought from Lamar Jackson to Jordan Love to Jalen Hurts, all black quarterbacks to start the season, by the way, a celebration of black excellence. I'm not mad at it. But between the three of those guys, I didn't feel like it was a great start to the season for any of them. Obviously, Jordan Love has the injury. Jalen Hurts, I know they won the game, but man, if there is a quarterback to feel the least confident in out of the four, it's clear out of the four that we saw to start the season on Thursday and Friday, it's clearly Jalen Hurts, one of the two winning quarterbacks. It was clearly Jalen Hurts, and Jordan Love didn't necessarily look that much better, and obviously he suffered this injury. And of course, Lamar Jackson. We'll talk about that. We'll actually talk about that in just a second. I'll get right back to that. But the Jordan Love injury looks bad. It's one of the things. So the Packers, and largely because of Jordan Love, and then of course their addition of Josh Jacobs, I feel like are one of the more exciting NFC teams to pay attention to. The way the Texans are no longer a sleeper Super Bowl pick, but became eventually a trendy Super Bowl pick. I thought that with Jordan Love, the Packers were on a very similar trajectory with their young guy. I know Jordan Love's been in the league longer than C.J. Stroud, but it was his first year starting last year. They had that little playoff moment. Jordan Love gets paid. They go out there and get Josh Jacobs. They've done some things to try to strengthen and shore up their defense, their run defense specifically. Like they are an exciting and interesting team to watch and follow, and one that I thought had a legitimate, and depending on what Jordan Love's injury is, felt like had a legitimate chance to threaten the other NFC powers, which I thought were legitimately just the 49ers going into the season. The 49ers, the Detroit Lions, and the Philadelphia Eagles, I thought were the clear class of the NFC. I thought some of the up-and-coming, or if not up-and-coming, sleeper threatening teams in the NFC would be the Green Bay Packers, the Los Angeles Rams, and the Chicago Bears. Now, I'm still sticking with that on the Chicago Bears and the Los Angeles Rams, but got to see what happened with this Jordan Love injury, where you look, I can't remember. I'm trying to remember if it was Jordan Davis, or I'm pretty sure it was one of those Jordan Davis or Jalen Carter. It was one of those one of those Georgia guys that got to him, and it was a couple of guys that got to him. And it's just not pretty and not a good outcome. Obviously not a good outcome, but what I would call an unfortunate and a buzz-killing outcome for a season opener, for the first game of the season. High hopes for Jordan Love, not just like in rooting interest, but in terms of just entertainment. One of the next big things at quarterback. And the Packers is one of those teams, kind of similar to the Texans in the AFC, as one that has a chance to become one of the new forces in the league. I thought that was really unfortunate and hated to see it. But throughout the entire, it's wild that would be the play that would result in what could be a major injury or what it looked like a scary injury where the whole night it was like hold your breath. Like if I'm an Eagles fan, I'm holding my breath the whole time. If I'm a Packers fan, I'm holding my breath the whole time because I feel like on any play, more so than usual, than just in a football game, because we understand in any play on a football game, anybody could get hurt. The game itself is an occupational hazard. But this one even more so. I would have been holding my breath if I was a team or a fan of one of those teams out there watching those guys play under those conditions. Now, I will say this. Saquon Barkley last night. Saquon Barkley being incredible was the least surprising thing. It was the least surprising development. Like Saquon Barkley, I know it's just one game, and we'll see how the season plays out. But Saquon Barkley being excellent, being incredible for the Philadelphia Eagles had to be the least surprising and most predictable thing to happen over these last couple of days. Now, I bring this up because Saquon Barkley was a talking point during the Texans offseason and during their free agency period. And it's funny because the Giants, who passed on re-signing Saquon Barkley, let him go out there and test the market, which is essentially passing on him because a player of that caliber who was drafted by the team and has had success with the team would, of course, feel offended that you would say, hey, go test the market and come back and holler at us and see what it looked like. So they let Saquon Barkley go in favor of signing Devin Motor Singletary. Devin Motor Singletary. Let me try that again. Maybe I should have just said his government name. Devin Singletary, who they also call Motor, who was with the Texans last year. So they let Saquon Barkley go in favor of the cheaper route, but still a really good running back in Devin Singletary. Whereas I know a lot of Texans fans, and this was a big conversation for us on the radio, Sports Radio 610, we're like, hey, Saquon, come on down. Texans, Super Bowl window, C.J. Stroud, franchise quarterback, elite quarterback, got all of this cap space, making all of these got draft capital, got cap space, got everything that you need to build a team. Come on down, Saquon Barkley. And somehow that became a little bit more of a controversial conversation that I was expecting it to be, because there were people that didn't want Saquon Barkley, or you've also got the folks that are philosophically opposed to paying a lot of money for a running back, drafting one high or paying them a lot of money. And I just was floored by it. I was like, how do y'all not want Saquon Barkley? Especially at running back prices. Like, to me, a player of Saquon Barkley's caliber at the running back position is going to always be underpaid because he's a running back, because that position is devalued, but he can do otherworldly things. Like that, his deal was going to be a bargain, and I just did not understand. And I did see my guy Corey Barrett on Twitter. Let me get Corey's tweet up because I thought this was funny. And I'm not the hit dog hollering on this either, but I did think this was funny. Let me see if I got it. Where is Corey's tweet about this? Basically, his point was that he didn't appreciate people, Texans fans, trolling other Texans fans who wanted Saquon Barkley, trolling the ones that didn't. This is what it was. Seeing Texans fans troll Texans fans who didn't want Barkley, knowing the team tried to sign him, but he chose Philly, is some sick simp shit. All right, Corey. Well, let me tell you this, man. I didn't actually do this, so I guess I don't fall in the category of the Texans fans that you saw trolling Texans fans. I didn't actually do it, but I ain't gonna lie to you. I thought about it. And I think there's some little holes in the logic that and I don't know if Corey's listening. Corey is one of the better Houston football fans that you'll find, especially online. And so, and a support, I appreciate the support too, as well as what we do at Sports Radio 610. But like, this is not about the Texans trying to sign him. It's about the fans. Okay, so put the team aside for a second. You talking about some simple shit. This was about the fans that were trying to convince everybody else that Saquon Barkley wasn't that good. And what the hell was that about? And those people should be trolled or shamed. Talking about, oh, Saquon Barkley and shoulder shrugging, like, I don't know if he's that good. And you didn't have the situation. You didn't have it running back over the last several years. I know Dameon Pierce had his year. Devin Singletary stepped up last year. But for the most part, I mean, what are we talking about? Is their last 1,000-yard rusher not Carlos Hyde from 5 years ago? Correct me if I'm wrong about that, but the 1,000 season of Carlos Hyde's career, you got that. I mean, for a Texan fan to shrug their shoulders or to turn their nose up at the idea of bringing in Saquon Barkley was just straight up weird, especially given where the Texans were, the situation that the Texans were in. We weren't talking about the 2021 Texans or the 2022 Texans. We're talking about 2024 Texans with money and with CJ Stroud and Will Anderson. And what are we doing? Why are we even debating this? Now, Saquon chose Philly. He wanted to go to Philly. That's cool. And I didn't realize that Joe Mixon was a possibility. They might trade, that they could trade for Joe Mixon. If I thought of that and factored that in, I said, okay, yeah, there are some pretty decent options out there aside from just signing Saquon Barkley. But the thing about Saquon, man, and the reason why it was so weird, like trying to process the is he really that good conversation, was you might find a running back who's faster than Saquon Barkley, but you won't find many. You might find a running back that is stronger than Saquon Barkley. I don't think you'll find many. Faster and stronger than Saquon Barkley, like find me the running back that has the combination, that has a better combination of strength and speed. And the jump cut and ability to make guys miss. Find me the running back that has it and that is for sure definitively better than Saquon Barkley in both. He, to me, has the best combination. And you can even throw like a guy like Christian McCaffrey out there. I think he's another one that's got that combination. Like he's the only one that would be in the conversation, and he's smaller than Saquon Barkley, but he's a rock. We understand that. Christian McCaffrey, a rock. Don't confuse that size for weakness. A rock. And the speed, yes, they're like he is another one of that ilk. Okay, so we were having a conversation about Christian McCaffrey. We'd be having the same conversation as far as I'm concerned. Saquon Barkley is different. Him going out there catching touchdown passes and then breaking for long runs like he did, multiple touchdowns in his first appearance as a Philadelphia Eagle, not surprising at all, not even a little bit. Perhaps the least surprising development of the entire night. Now, the Eagles, we're talking about the winning team here. They did win the game. That defense, look, I know their defense gave up, 29 points in this game? What was the final score? Was it 34-29? Yeah, so they gave up 29 points in the game. I understand that. And their defense becoming leaky, like their defense became an issue. Their defense became an issue last year, especially their secondary. But man, when I look at that front, at them Georgia boys that they got, their linebackers, their safeties, man, that is a team with a defense that should be a monster. And then Vic Fangio is coordinating the defense. I am very, very intrigued to watch them play over the course of the season. Like, the defense should be a monster. The offense should be Good because of the skill players in the offensive line. And so that is what I believe in when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. I believe in their defense because they look incredible. And again, I know they gave up 29 points, but man, they just look like an explosive unit that is going to go out there and force some turnovers and force some real uncomfortable situations for opposing teams. I'm very intrigued. I think the Eagles are going to be good because of their defense and their skill players on the offensive side. Saquon Barkley, as we mentioned. But Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown as a tandem might be the best that there is right now for my money. And I understand Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins and Tank Dell are with the Texans. And I do think that some combination, if you take two out of those three and probably start with Stephon Diggs and just take either Nico or Tank, that you can make a real legitimate argument for that being the best wide receiver tandem. And if you take the three of them, you could say that's the best trio, wide receiver trio. If you want. I know, look, the Bears are over there with Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze, the rookie. But that's a pretty good trio right there. I mean, there are a lot that we can make this conversation about, but between the Eagles defense, those skill players that they have on offense and that offensive line, I would be shocked if they are not in the mix at the end. Now, this was something I didn't think about and came up on the broadcast, how this is the first time, I don't know if it's the first time ever or just the first time in a long time, but I could see it being the first time ever, of a team going into a season, 3 straight seasons with the same head coach, but different coordinators on both sides of the ball. Didn't think about that because in 2022, obviously, Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator and Jonathan Gannon was the defensive coordinator the year that they went to the Super Bowl. Both of those guys are gone because they were so good. They got head coaching jobs, and the coordinator hires that he made last year did not exactly work or pan out. New coordinators now this year. Didn't think about that, but it is something to monitor with the Eagles in terms of what direction do they go in. Do they is that part of the reason why? And I do think it could, having Vic Fangio running that defense, I do think that could be part of the reason why they are a lot better than they were last year and a lot less disappointing than they were last year if they do that. But I'll say this did actually occur to me. And I hate to do this because both of those quarterbacks last night on Friday night, all 4 of the quarterbacks are ones that I root for. Okay, just like when they're, of course, when they're not playing the Texans or whatever it is, they're quarterbacks that I root for. Patrick. Forgot his mama don't like when you call him Pat. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts probably more than any of them because of what I feel like he stands for. And, of course, he's from the crib. He's from the town, right? Channelview kid. But I couldn't help but think watching him, man, without Shane Steichen calling the plays, I just don't see it, man. I don't see it. I'm not trying to be a hater. It actually hurts to even say this because I'm rooting for dude, and if I'm being honest, I've suspected for a long time that it's not really giving, to put it kindly. I think Jalen Hurts, not that he's bad or anything, I'm not saying Jalen Hurts sucks. Not saying that. I'm just saying, like, if I was an Eagles fan, I'm glad I'm not. I'm glad I'm not for this reason, because it would not. Everything about him inspires confidence because of how confident he is, how competent he seems to be, and like he's an impressive dude. But when you get outside of some of the intangibles that he presents, the fact that he's strikingly handsome, and so he just presents leadership. He presents, yeah, man, we'll follow that guy. We'll go into the foxhole with that guy. He presents that way, and especially in football, kind of got like a tough guy element to him. But just in terms of the skills and the things that you want out of your quarterback, accuracy, like he is not an inaccurate quarterback, but he does not possess like the level of arm talent that you would want out of your franchise quarterback, which you might say, okay, that's fine, but he must be a runner. He must be like this supreme athlete or something. He must like really threaten the defense like vertically, with his legs or whatever. Man, when you see him on those options, on those read options, keep the ball, like when Lamar Jackson keeps the ball on a read option, you're like, oh shit, dude, oh my God. Like it's scary, right? When Kyler Murray keeps the ball on a read option, you're like, oh shit, what is happening? When Anthony Richardson in the RPO game decides to run it, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Josh Allen, who's not particularly fast, but for that size, does move very well and is that size, which Jalen Hurts is not. Oh, whoa, wait a minute. Like it is threatening. It is scary. It looks like a weapon. When Jalen Hurts keeps the ball on a some kind of option read, it's just like, all right, what is that? What are they doing with that? What's the plan with that? Like he does not frequently enough and often enough outrun defensive linemen. Much less like a linebacker that's spying on him, or like a defensive back or anything like that. Like he is just not an incredible athlete, speed wise, or an incredible thrower of the football. What he is, he's in incredible shape. He's incredibly strong, especially for his size, but incredibly strong because he's a dedicated power lifter. And he's got all of those leadership intangibles, the intelligence and the willingness to lead that you want to have in your quarterback. But all of those other things where you either want like high level arm talent or high level athleticism, man, it ain't there. It ain't there, man. It's just not. And I hate to sound like a hater. I don't want to sound like a hater, but that's just the feeling. Them's the vibes, when you watch it. And I can't help but think, when Shane Steichen was calling the plays for Jalen Hurts, it looked one way. And when anybody else been calling the plays for him, it looked another. Like the more I watch Jalen Hurts without Shane Steichen, the more I am impressed by and respect Shane Steichen, who the Texans will be facing here in just a little bit over 24 hours from me recording this. And who knows by the time you hear it. It was the way I localized that game. It was the way I looked at that game through a Houston sports fans' lens. Like, man, I really wish and really hope for Jalen Hurts as a fellow Houstonian. Really hope for him to just be better and play better. And he's already won, right? Had a really good performance in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Got paid. Is the franchise like he's won? He's already won in that sense, I think. But I want him to continue winning. I want him to continue elevating this game. And when I watch him, man, I just don't see it. I don't see it at all, especially absent of a Shane Steichen calling the plays for him. It's just my feeling, man. Just my feeling, Waddy. And I don't like it. I don't like it. I did feel like I was watching 4 elite teams to start the season and that none of them looked insurmountable. None of them looked insurmountable to me. I know it's just week 1. You can't glean too much. You don't want to read too much into the first week. But between the Chiefs, the Ravens, and on the NFC side, the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles, I did feel like I was watching rusty versions of four of the better teams in all of football, none of them looked like, oh man, they can't compete with that. In reference to the Texans, I didn't think, oh man, the Texans, like you could see at times where the Ravens would be a tough man. I think they're still probably a tough matchup for the Texans. Don't get me wrong. But you can see how those matchups could be overwhelming. Like, ooh, I don't know what they're gonna do with that. I don't know what they're gonna do with the Ravens. I don't know what they're gonna do with the Chiefs. Which I would say probably still make that argument because they do have Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones on the other side. Like, I could see, but just based off of these first games, I'm like, man, I want to see what the Texans gonna look like. I want to see what the Texans and the Colts are gonna look like when they play each other. How does it feel like they look in comparison compared to four elite teams to start the season? None of them looked insurmountable. How beastly will the Texans look? How beastly will they be coming out on Sunday? Didn't feel like I saw an insurmountable team, which is a pretty good feeling, but it's just week one. Can only make but so much of it. Now I'm gonna get out of here because I got work to do, especially leading up to this Texas-Michigan game, which I think should be an NFL draft primer. If you are an NFL draft nerd, this should be like pornography to you. It should be like pornography to you. The front lines for these two teams are incredible. I don't feel like breaking the game down because by the time you hear this, the game will probably be on or possibly over. But the strength on strength of Texas's offensive line and Michigan's defensive line, which I think is just full of guys, all of them, if you just go up and down the board, all of them I think are going to play in the NFL. Some of them are going to be high draft picks. Okay, so if you look at Texas's 5 offensive linemen and Michigan's like 3-4 defensive front, so 7 on one side, 5 on the other, between those 12 players, be shocked if a minimum of 10 of them are not in the NFL. Okay, and probably all of them. But be shocked if a minimum of 10 of them are not in the NFL. Probably that entire Texas offensive line, and definitely the defensive tackles for Michigan. Mason Graham. Okay, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, I think, are for sure NFL players. I don't think I'm breaking new ground there. And then the entire Texas offensive line is going to go to the NFL. Like the entire thing. So draft nerds, be on the lookout. Be having a good time with this. I think this is going to be one of those games to really pay attention to in the trenches, if you will. And I'm excited about it. So I'm going to get out of here, let y'all have it, let y'all have the rest of y'all's weekend. I just wanted to make sure I got on here and react to the beginning of the NFL season because it was a hoot and it was compelling. Can't lie. It was compelling watching the Packers and the Eagles perform under occupational hazardous circumstances and conditions. That's all I got on the B Block today. Make sure that you are subscribed. Subscribe to the B Block podcast wherever it is you get your podcast. Be sure to also rate the podcast and leave a review. You can also subscribe on YouTube and check us out in video form there as well. If you're still in the sports radio, and I hope that you are, very much hope that you are, I am also on Sports Radio 610 every Tuesday from 11 a.m. to noon with In the Loops, Reginald Atatula, John Lopez, and Figgy Fig. And then I'm back on Wednesdays at 4:40 on The Drive with Clint Sterner and Ryan Hughley. Again, that's at 4:40. All those times are central. Make sure y'all check us out. Holla at your boy. And until next time, y'all be good.